Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Currency of Discourse, and you're here with Quaid and the other person who sometimes likes to remain nameless, so I'll leave it that way for now. We want to talk about the different political labels out there, so conservative and liberal, what the real differences are, and the different, I think we'll get into the different fractions, or the different factions of those groups and what they mean, if they're really different or how they're different. And so this idea was proposed by Jay. So I think he's got some things bubbling on the top of his mind that he wants to talk about regarding those. And we'll see what he has to say.
I didn't remain nameless for very long, but
oh shit,
I don't care, man. It's all
Okay.
good. It just made me laugh. I just thought it'd be good to try and. I noticed that in some of, almost all of our podcasts episodes that we've done, you know, we will just throw out the word conservative, we'll throw out the word liberal, and we often do a lot of generalization with that. And I think I'd like to think that when we are generalizing, we're doing it appropriately. I would have to go back and look at everything, but I thought it'd be good for us to try to break down what we think those words actually mean. So when our audience is listening to us throw those words out there and use those words, they kind of get what we mean when we think of conservative and liberal, and even further than that, what the difference is between you and I. When you say conservative, it might mean something different, and I'm pretty sure it is going to mean something different to you than it does to me. And I thought it'd be good to try and maybe identify what we think some of the problems of each political realm is and some of their strengths. And I suppose I'll just start with, I think, what I think of as an ideal kind of conservatism versus what I see today. I'll start with that. I feel like I can speak more to the conservative side more accurately than I can the liberal side, but we'll see. So growing up, in touching back to our American Myths episodes, is, you know, when I think of conservatives, have you ever heard of the show? It's a really old show. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not, but have you ever heard of Little House on the Prairie?
Yeah.
Okay. When I think of conservative, in my head, I think Little House on the Prairie conservative, in the sense that family is important to you. Family is valued above all. And the functions and the functionality of the community is brought upon more by the individuals within it than some kind of existing government structure. The onus is on them to shape and make the community, both from, you know, a functional standpoint, so that's things like ensuring people have water, blah blah blah, and the value system, you know, shaping the culture. And so I think that is kind of the, if you base your framework off of the kind of things that you see in those shows, that's kind of an ideal conservatism. But when I think back to that era of time that show set in, or the show itself, one of the things that I think that the conservative mindset had back then, when it was portraying that era, was something that we talked about in other episodes that conservatives lack, is the lack of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you guys in the episode that didn't air, you and Chris, made this point that in today's modern age, the conservatives tend to lack empathy for the wider population, and I think that's hurt, you know, the things that a conservative might strive for in society, because they don't seem to care for, you know, people that they might label other than themselves. That's a major problem for them.
Well, also keeping in mind, though, that Little House on the Prairie was also written at a time where not everybody was empathized with, too.
Sure.
But that's not necessarily everybody. I don't remember what that household's policy was.
I'm referring to the portrayal of things, though, not necessarily the reality. But I think that I think the portrayal of conservative ideas in that show was supposed to inject itself on people behaving in real life.
Mm.
But yeah, go if
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen that show, so I can't. I remember Laura Ingalls, and I
Sure.
remember she's not the one that's blind, right? She's not the one that goes blind. That one of the kids goes blind.
I don't know.
It does seem like a really wholesome show. I mean, that's what my mom used to watch. It seems really wholesome. I can understand. It makes sense to me to dream about that idea. I think that idea is correct. Like, I think that no matter what I think it's best. I think no matter what your political affiliation is, that you should want to live conservatively. I think the individual should think conservatively. I think that they should think about regiment and what their behavior imposes on other people when they do it, and to be very stern with your decisions and what you think is right, what you think is going to help people. Economically, you should live conservatively. You shouldn't be wasteful. You shouldn't waste food. These are all things that I think people should be doing at an individual level. And I think that's the way that I've come to see it, is that, like, I kind of want to live conservatively, even though I'll end up voting Democrat a lot of the times, or I'll end up voting for liberal people. So, like, my social policies are liberal, but my individual policies are conservative.
So, okay, so I think that's a great opportunity for me to ask a question to you then, if you live conservatively, what causes you to vote a more liberal direction? How because that's a dichotomy that a lot of people be like, that doesn't make sense at the face of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's better in terms of policy because I don't know what other people go through. I think that's probably it. And I'm not going to pretend to. I'm not there. Other people are comfortable with that. I personally find that ridiculous. I know what I go through though, right? And so for me, my struggles, I know that my struggles and my journey don't have to be, I know that, my struggles don't have to be obstacles for me. That's all I know. I don't know that somebody else's obstacles aren't legitimately troublesome for them.
Right.
All I can know about is myself. And so I think that's part of it too, is that the ignorance of what's going on, like, is very intense once I step outside of myself, my ignorance of other people and what their motivations are in their lives. I only have my own linear experience. So I think that puts me in a position to really do my best. Plus, I think that
do you think conservatism implies some type of restriction, that you're voting liberally because you don't want those restrictions on others? You're trying to allow for them to live more
No, I
freely?
think it could help them. I think that's the way. I think that what it takes to get in a conservative mindset is time. It takes time and caring. I think that's what a lot of people end up lacking in childhood. They don't have nurturing parents, and so that ends up creating a circumstance of a very liberal individual, essentially, because they weren't given the time to develop, or the patience to develop, or the skills watching their parents. I guess your parents should also be conservative at some point, but
yeah, that's a good point too. It seems like if you're going to go down the conservative road, that has to start very early for a young person, in the sense that developing discipline or values that you stick to consistently, those kind of have to be ingrained at you at a young point.
It becomes really difficult after,
particularly not just for you to maintain yourself, but to push out into society. So your personal discipline, your hard work ethic, letting people see that. That's hard to do if it's not something you've developed early, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, I think that even with kids, like, I think you should learn to treat kids more liberally, and I think through acting conservatively and trying to more so engage with this new human being that's new. It's just like, I can't say for certain, like, there's a part of your voice that will always end up in your child's voice's head, or in your child's head. Right?
Yeah,
it's going to be
sure.
your child's inner voice, right? So, but I think that there's something about the engagement negatively and creating negative emotions around things that often make us avoid rather than accept. right? So if you're watching a parent that's conservative when they approach you about their lifestyle, they're like, hey, these are things that you can do and they will really help you. I don't think that that's past the child's head. I don't think that's past a lot of people's head. I think it does get harder the older you get, so and it's probably going to change the type of help that you want to give somebody. But I think that it's the same thing with free will. Like we talked about free will and determinism. I think that is also a good way in some ways of looking at conservatives and conservatives and liberals too, is that conservatives are probably more likely to, and this is a probably because I don't know, probably more likely to harp on the idea of free will, whereas liberals are more likely to harp on the idea of circumstance, condition, and determinism.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And I think that the best policy for me, this is only for me, is to live as if I have free will.
Right.
So live as if my choices matter, but to treat other people as if they really don't. And that helps me.
That's really interesting.
When I'm engaging with another person, it's like, I'm not you. I can't make your decisions. I can't feel your emotions. I just can't connect with you on that. I have to assume there's things going on with you. But for me, I know that I can be responsible for myself and act. And again, I think it would be a best policy for them to adopt that as well. I think what you get is you get people who are self-regulated but are empathetic. They're self-regulated, but they understand that they're not going through what other people are, and they can really only offer help outside help, and to live their own life, to live in a way that hopefully demonstrates this is the way to go, not that way.
So again, just to drive the point, I think everything you just said was like right on, as in terms of how I feel, to be like a way of behavior is very appropriate. And I think I try to do that myself, maybe not as intentional about it as you are, but to drive the point home, I think that again, a failure of the conservative side of things is that lack of empathy. And it seems that I don't know if there's a yin and yang to this, but what you were saying about the liberal side is, for them, it's more about less about putting things on yourself and more about being aware of, someone's circumstances, where they come from. The yin and yang to that, I don't know if, maybe the liberal side behaves that way because they don't see the evidence of. I think that's the problem, is not just empathy, but from the conservative side, is there isn't evidence in wider society that way of conduct is beneficial to everyone. And so you get the reaction of the liberal side of saying we have to make things more equitable for everyone because this personal conduct, this way of just,
it doesn't, it's like the Jordan, we're back to there again, but Jordan Peterson and Slavoj Žižek, it goes to that point that Žižek made. It's like, you can live like Peterson's telling you, right? And I don't even, if you listen to it, that's a great compromise. Is Jordan Peterson, I don't think Slavoj Žižek is saying people shouldn't live like that. I think what he's actually saying is us as outside observers looking at case instances, you realize that it's not as simple as telling somebody in North Korea to do that. It's going to change things drastically for them. That it's going to, it's like, it's not really. Now, should someone in North Korea still try to live the best life that they can conservatively?
I'm sure that they do, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like they're kind of forced to.
Working hard to provide for their family whatever they can. But
right, and then as an outside observer looking like, oh, my job isn't to look at them and say, you need to do this. It's I need to do this, and I need to figure out how to get you. Because I think what we do is we end up disrespecting each other a lot. I try to get to a place mentally where I'm like, I'm not going to assume, I'm not going to try to control other people, because I really can't do it, So it's like, I lost my thought. It'll come back to me eventually.
It happens to me all the time, man.
It'll come back. I was close, though. There was some point there.
But, okay, so just to clarify to our audience, when they're listening to me talk, when I'm talking about conservatism, conservative ideas, it should kind of pop up in their head, like to give them visual of how I think communities and behavior should be. I just call it, like for me, I just name it like Little House on the Prairie conservatism. just because I think that gives someone a really clear visual of, I like people. In an ideal world, to me, it would be nice to see people in their own community solving their own problems, and not somebody,
Yeah,
hundreds of miles
that's it. Okay.
away
Yeah.
coming to their aid, or creating a solution for them. I like to see power down at the lowest level, because that allows more influence for those in those communities to shape, that it gives them flexibility to shape what
Hmm.
their community should look like based on their
And that's what
circumstances.
that's actually, yeah, thank you for that. So what my point was then, that I try not to adopt philosophies that assume, generally speaking, too much that people are dishonest and immoral.
Mm.
And so I'm not going to so I think that it takes a certain lack of trust in people to say, in people generally, to say, oh well, that group's really just lying,
Mm.
or even that group just doesn't care about the right things, rather than maybe that group cares about all the things that you do. They care, but they want independence, they want freedom, they want to make the right choices, they just don't have the capacity to, right?
Right,
That would
right.
lend to what you were saying, what I'm saying, which is that, like, looking on the outside, the best that you can do is provide as much help as you can, and hope that that and really have a sense of faith on some level that people, when you get down to it, do want honesty and they want morality, that they
Mm.
really do want those things, because that is something I think that I believe that's hard for me to get around. I don't now generally it might, or I mean specifically it might not be true. There might be instances where people really aren't like that, but I think generally speaking, I don't believe that's true. I think wherever
No, I completely agree with you.
we're missing some, wherever there's something that's untrue that's going on, or wherever something that's immoral is going on, we don't want it to be that way. We feel like it has to be that way, or we're trapped. We're going to come up with these reasons why they're this way. And I think that part of it is not just the inner, but the outer, recognizing that people can only go so, they can only stretch their morality and their ignorant or their intelligence so far. Right?
Right.
Those are things that they can only really stretch so far, that you need help at certain points. It's like you can find someone that is going to be a saint in the most dire situation, right? But that's not everybody. That doesn't mean everybody doesn't want what's good. We just don't have it all in us, okay? And I think to pretend that we do is naivety. And I think that the other way to look at it is, everybody would make choices if circumstances were more optimal more times. And that takes kind of like an outside observer saying, okay, I have to change the conditions here.
Mm-hmm.
So that way the good in people can really start to come out and flourish. It's like soil, it's like soil
Yeah.
and flowers type deal.
And that seems to be a strength of the liberal side, is that
Mm-hmm.
they can sometimes see the bigger picture ultimately, I think. So in the sense of, like, they often use these major scientific studies to demonstrate, we have a problem with the water system here, or we have
Mm-hmm.
the planet seems to be warming up, and we're going to have to change things in a major way. That to me is a strength of the liberal side, and often why sometimes I tend to vote that way is because those problems seem to be more transcendent than other issues. And I feel like, okay, well, I need people in office that are willing to at least address those first,
Mm-hmm.
and we can worry about all the other problems between ourselves later. But we
Yeah.
gotta have a place. We gotta have like a rock that functions
Right. Yeah. I
for
agree
us
with
to
that.
do anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pretty wholeheartedly. Yeah, I mean it's difficult too, especially when you get to people. Like I want to help people, obviously. I was just reading about a study, and I don't remember who it was by, so it may not be credible at all. So I'm just gonna say what it is, and then hopefully I can look at it. I don't. The thing is, so like I don't really care whether it's true or false. That's why I'm saying it. I would verify if I wanted it to be true. I think it's something to think about. But essentially, like, they had two groups, and one group they gave like basically everything that you would think that a human would need. They gave them good education, good health care, like just those basic things. And they went back to those groups two later, and one of those groups, so they had a control group where they didn't have any of those things, and then one where they did have all those things. And they went back, and essentially the group that got all the stuff like had more issues. Like they had more issues, and I have to look that up because but the thing is though is that there's counterintuitive things like that in life all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you just absolutely would not think. Or like I remember the first time that I heard that people who are murdered, you are more likely to be murdered or victimized by somebody you know than somebody you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't seem intuitive to us because
Right.
we think, well, we're close to them. Why would they do anything to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because we've utterly failed to understand the complexity of social systems, essentially. And so things like that you also need to accommodate for. So in the same token that we say, like, we think liberals have it right here, it's also important to recognize that the methods might not be right, and also that it's not just as easy as, oh, I think if this would work, then it's going to work, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can't just give money to a bunch of people and expect everything's going to be solved, right? It's how you implement the money. All those things also have to be taken into consideration.
There really seems to be something to the humans earning what you have seems to be a significant component to the human spirit, and I think that's what conservatives often try to argue is like, you have to earn this. Like, we can give it to you, but it will fail.
Right.
There's
If
just
you
something,
don't earn it.
Yeah, there's just something there. I don't know
Yep.
what the psychological aspect of that is, but
And they're right about that. That's the
Yeah.
thing too. Is I agree with them at least. You know, I agree with them on that aspect. You know, and the thing is, the other component of that then is I don't treat people like they don't want to earn their living. I really think that you do have a bunch of people who are in circumstances where they don't feel like if they do work, they're going to get any farther ahead.
yeah, it's a lose-lose for them.
Exactly. They're like, well, shit, I have to choose, and then we get upset when they, you know, not to say that it's right, but when, you know, they deal drugs, or they find other ways to work hard and get money.
Yeah.
You know, we get upset at that sometimes. But I agree with that basically wholeheartedly. The whole.
But I mean, it is to me. I would consider like the aspect. So the I'm trying to just use simple words when like in this conversation. So the aspect of sharing, like as a liberal, like a high liberal value, something that I
Right.
respect is sharing what you have. So if you have everything in the world and no one else does, it makes sense to me to give back and to give something to your community, right? But I guess maybe there just has to be a way to figure out, like there has to be a component of maybe the sharing, but earning the sharing in some way. But I don't know how you bridge the two necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's about, you know, conservatives have said this too. It's like you hear conservatives say this, but maybe there's just not as much good solutions on the table for them, or they're too busy trying to fight liberals. I don't know what it is, but the idea that you want equity of opportunity, not equity of outcome. Jordan Peterson has said that,
yes.
right? And it's like, that's great. What are your ideas? You know, okay, so you're agreeing money needs to be spent. So we agree on that. So that does require sometimes higher taxation, whatever else. Okay. You seem to have a problem with just giving it to people, right? I agree with that to a certain degree. So what do we do here, right? You know, do we encourage businesses to move into lower income areas and provide good work there? Do you again, some things seem really basic and intuitive to me. If you have a more educated populace who are healthier, they're probably going to end up bringing business back themselves to their areas. They're going to be smart enough. Their family's there. They know a lot of people there. They're ingrained in the communities. You know, some of it's going to return that way. So it seems very intuitive, you know, and then it becomes different when we're talking about kids too. It's like, I'm cool with the whole like earned as an adult. I'm not willing to have the same conversation about children, because I think that children don't really earn anything. They're given it. You know, they're lucky and fortunate enough to have a family to give it to them. So when it comes to children, I think we should be providing those healthcare, you know, things like that. When it comes to adults, I think we need to get more in the mindset. Oh, you know, even like I think it all's going to boil down to resources. Really, don't give somebody a paycheck, but give them the option to go to a mental health facility. That's good, you know. That's actually good. Like a well-funded healthcare facility. So if people really have issues, they can go there. Same thing with hospitals or anything else. You know, I think if you do have those things, again, we got to go back to that, whatever that study was, you know, and I'll find it because I don't know what the conditions were. But I think that it's not just a matter of, I guess to me, the part I would agree with conservatives is you're not just doling out cash. You're asking, okay, what do you need? And then how can I, or yeah, I guess maybe it doesn't have to be done with healthcare. I'm sorry. It doesn't have to be done with anything. Really, if you just give them the opportunity. So it's just like, I'm not going to give you healthcare. I'm not going to give you mental health care or dental care, but I am going to give you a job that can get you all those things. Right?
Yeah.
There's not even that option. There is not that option, you know, except for like very few can say, well, they can just join the military or something like that. It's just like, that is one option. Great.
Yeah, but that's not reality for most.
Right. You want a multitude of options like rich people have. Rich people can achieve those things with more opportunities than just, well, join the military.
Right. I don't want to derail the conversation with a statistic. I can't remember the statistic, but the American population currently, there's a insanely small percentage of individuals who can even qualify anymore for the military.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
People aren't healthy enough, or because of mental health aspects, they've taken medication in their youth that basically doesn't allow them to be in the military anymore.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and obesity is another issue, but
the last I heard, there were people going, or there were more people, but that was a long time ago. That was like when we were in high school. I think it was the
at the
right?
height of the Civil War in Iraq. Yeah, they were like, neck tattoo, cool, great. I don't care that you got some skull and bones on your Adam's apple, but now all those people are getting booted out now, though.
Oh man,
yeah.
So
the military gets pretty liberal in a sense when they need people, but immediately becomes very conservative fast again once things settle down.
Which, you know, again, as long as those people have jobs, it would be a good thing, wouldn't it? It's just like, oh, we're not in conflict, so we don't need as many people whose jobs are to engage in engagement,
right,
or kind of quell conflict or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but let's go into, I think, kind of more definitional now, because I feel like we've both expressed how we feel, but in terms of the actual definitions, you know, and the different ways that those communities can be misunderstood. Like, so for instance, you have conservatives, you have the Tea Party, you have neoconservatives. Do you have neoconservatives or neoliberals conservatives? God damn, I'm so confused.
I think both exist.
Okay, our neoliberals are still liberal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, conservatives, Republican. You know, there's gonna be a difference from conservative. You know, libertarians, I think, might go on the conservative side. Sometimes they're neutral. Depends on what you're talking about or what type of libertarian it is. You have like tiers of libertarians.
I don't think I'm gonna be the best at defining all these different terms, but with libertarian, I feel more confident in saying that they're economically conservative, but socially liberal.
Yeah, that's the general stick. Yeah, but some of them accept abortion. Some of them don't accept abortion.
Right.
Some of them believe that gay people should be able to get married. Some people think that there shouldn't be marriage at all.
But libertarian, again, trying to like come back to like what's going on in modern days is my perspective. Like, I got into libertarianism. I don't describe myself as a libertarian, really.
Yeah,
but,
I did too, and I don't anymore.
I got into that because I felt that was a better place for me to be than the modern Republican Party, because of the socially liberal aspect in terms of just letting people live how they want to live.
Yeah, and I was on that same boat too for a little bit. You know, I remember I'm pretty sure both of us got into, you know, Adam Kokesh at some point, and
not for very long.
Yeah. Not me either.
The whole marching with loaded weapons into DC. I was like, yeah, you know, I just...
Yeah. But there's Stefan Molyneux, right? You know, I got into him for a little bit.
Milton Friedman was more...
Okay.
Like, Milton Friedman, I was going to say Thomas Sowell, but I'm not sure he's a libertarian.
Yeah, I don't know if he is either.
But Milton Friedman mostly.
Yeah.
One of my advisors in college really kind of got us into and a lot of what he has to say, I mean, seems to make sense, seems to be pragmatic and practical, but
Yeah, but there, I liked a bunch of Facebook pages or whatever, and it just seems like even they believe different things, and they get upset when you label them X when they don't believe X, which means just like, well, then what's the point of belonging to a group at that point if we can't really pin you down at all?
Yeah.
Because again, some of them are going to be like for gay marriage, and some of them are going to say marriage. Some of them are going to say there should be no government, and that's when you get into like anarchists.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like there are just different sects everywhere. Same thing with liberal, you have Democrat, you have liberal, you have neoliberal, you have socialist, you have communist, you have liberal, you have democratic socialist, you have social democrats. I mean, the list goes on and on,
I think the labels start to matter less when you're talking to the like ordinary individual. I mean, the labels matter more at an academic or policy setting level, but I think if you can strip away, someone's like identification of who they are from like a T-shirt or whatever, and you get just two people talking, I think they're more likely to come to reasonable conclusions together. Like for me, in an ideal world, it's something kind of what you've talked about before about how you're not interested in labeling things because it gives you certain connotations to who you are. I think it'd be better if politically people weren't labeled Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, because it immediately places a connotation on them. It makes it more difficult to come to agreements. Whereas if those terms weren't so easily self-identifiable, it would just be easier to come to agreements. But
it can get complicated though too, both ways. So like, how else do you find out a lot of information about someone in a short amount of time, right?
Yeah,
without listening to absolutely everything you say. I know. There's something called like first past the post, I think, right? There's different voting methods, and our binary system is really harmful for that exact reason, is it really only gives us two options.
Mm-hmm.
You want more options than that. But I still agree with you in terms of like, I still don't like the labels either. I let other people label me for that reason, especially when I think individually is when it becomes problematic because, for instance, I think it's okay, to have a conversation about conservative and liberal, or say, I think conservatives are this way or liberals are this way, when you're speaking to like, an audience you don't know about, a fictional audience, right? That's in your head, because you're
like our audience,
right? Yes. Well, actually,
currently fictional.
Yeah, I actually meant in by the way, the academic sense of fictional, which is that all audiences are fictions. Everybody makes their audience in their head.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's been people who have said that essentially that academics have said that, and they're right. Audiences are in our heads. But anyway, so when you're speaking to a general people, because it could be any given person you're talking to, right? But when you talk one-on-one with a person and you have that label in your head, conservative, you now come with these prescribed kind of like beliefs you think they have and arguments you think they have for their beliefs, and they're an individual. So at this point, their beliefs and arguments have probably gotten really complex as an individual. That doesn't mean that they necessarily are, but I think that it's better to use it generally, and it's not so good to use it. It's better to kind of drop the labels and flesh everything out with that person right there, because they are right there, and you can't do that with an audience that's fictional, right?
Right.
You could do that with an individual. If people want to label themselves, that's cool, because then I am going to have those assumptions. But then I don't like to have those labels, because then it should make it harder to assume about me if you don't really know what I am. You'd have to just ask me. So that's just a convenience for me. I'm not saying that's what other people should do. It happens to end up being the way that I believe things. Like I end up not fitting a label really well.
The labels have to be close enough for everyone to come to a consensus as to what they actually mean. Mm-hmm. And I think that's again, another problem that we have right now is that, like my perspective on conservatism, what I was talking about earlier in the episode, is I don't think that that's actually reflective of the modern party. And so if I said I'm a conservative, when I'm thinking of like Little House on the Prairie type conservative. That I don't think that is so prevalent in society that makes sense to say I'm conservative. And so when people are using those phrases now, I don't think it's clear what those words mean like they used to. I think it was probably easy, like when William F. Buckley was a popular conservative doing those debates with Gore Vidal. I think it was pretty clear, not that I could define it clearly myself, but I think back then at the time to say you were conservative probably meant something pretty specific, and when everyone used that word, they were probably on the same page. That's not the case anymore. It's not the case anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're right about that for sure. Yeah. The conservative. That's why you have the never Trumpers, who are conservative, because they're like this new conservatism.
They're like, nope,
not a part of it. So that's always happening. And there was a time where conservatives seemed to be more unified, and liberals seemed to be more unified. At that point, I think conservatives are more unified than liberals, though. At this point,
so maybe
very clearly.
I don't know if it's a problem, but the labels are about organizing, right? So with the Never Trumpers, they come up with the term Never Trumper, so they know who to organize with. They know who their allies are, or it may be, and I don't know that this is the right answer or not. This is just thought exploration right now. Is maybe the way that you organize in terms of labeling needs to shift from political ideology to maybe your community. If everyone labels themselves as like a member of this community rather than a member of a political ideology, maybe you can come to easier solutions, because the implication of the way that you label yourself allows you to organize in a more collaborative way. Where the way that we label things now is an adversarial. It ends up being more adversarial. It makes it more difficult for collaboration, I guess, is what I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah, I'm having trouble picturing it, but I think, like, are you saying, like...
So a Republican and Democrat puts themselves immediately at opposing standpoints, whereas, like,
Huber Heightsian isn't necessarily against the Trotwoodian. Like, say something like that. Like, if you heard, like, oh, you're a Trotwoodian? Well, I don't really have any opinions about Trotwoodian people.
Well, I don't think that would be... we live in a world where you kind of need to function regionally. So, maybe you could do it that way. I don't know. Like I said, this is more just thought exploration in terms of your labels imply certain ways of organizing, and there might be better ways of labeling each other that allows for more collaborative abilities to organize.
Yeah.
Where, like, the political way of labeling is adversarial.
Yeah.
Or at least seems to be at this point.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a solution to that. That seems like a very difficult question. And people view them, it's like, there's actually a video by a guy named, or it's a YouTube channel called Non-Compete. And he does a lot of videos on labels, which are really kind of, I think I sent you one video by him.
I don't know. I don't recall.
But, he's going to talk about sociology and theories in sociology and how that applies to people and so on and so forth. So that's where he comes from. But one of the things that he does is he talks about, he has he has these puppets or whatever. So he does puppets sometimes. He doesn't always do puppets, but he has one where, like, he has he has an anarchist, and he has a communist, and he has, like, a socialist. So he has all these different, like, quote unquote liberal types of people, right? And so he's got this scenario where the boss,
I'm assuming these are videos.
Yeah, they're videos. Yeah. There's a boss who wants them to work longer hours, and they're supposed to, like, come together and collaborate to try to fight the boss, right? To say, like, no, like, we're done working longer hours so you can be paid more, and suffering, essentially. And then they start to figure out what their own differences are and start to fight amongst each other, and then they end up working the weekend because they now don't like each other because of those subtle differences, rather than coming together against something that they see as more difficult. And so that is his kind of representation of the Liberal Party at this point, essentially.
Well, they call it the Big Tent Party.
Oh,
which
do they
is,
do?
the Democrats, they themselves call it the Big Tent Party,
Mm.
and that implies that it's a large group of people with a bunch of different ideas, but they come together to find solutions anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that I
It's
don't
not
know
the
if
same
it's,
connotation, maybe.
yeah.
Because especially with liberals, so, you have like Tea Party. Like right now, I think the biggest division in the Republican Party is Trumpers and never Trumpers. I'm pretty sure every other line they've been able to find common ground and come together on. But with liberals, I think we're in this tiff now between the establishment, and then you have communists, and then because there are Democrats who don't like communists or socialists, and you can understand that on some level, but they really don't, and they're not going to align with them. And then you have democratic socialists who are trying to distinguish themselves from socialists. And again, we've talked about this. This is a historical thing. It didn't just happen recently, in America. Now that people don't want to identify socialist, it's prior to that. And then you have social democrats, which is an even different thing. Social democrats work within a capitalist system, so all of those kind of mean different things, but they're also really different, which makes it like, so for instance, a communist or a socialist is really focused on the state, and state power, or it kind of has to be in some way. That is until you get to like a democratic socialist that now believes in voting. Those are two different, completely different ways to structure your government.
Isn't it interesting that, again,
Like
a
drastic.
major component of, I would say a big component of liberalism is collectiveness,
Mm-hmm.
like getting everyone to be on the same page and creating equity, right?
Yes.
Whereas they fracture so easily on subtle things, because they'll place so much value on one particular thing that if you don't agree to it, they will not cooperate with you.
Yeah, well, it's also not even necessarily subtle. That's the thing. Like, if you talk to conservatives, and unless you're getting to like some really hardcore libertarians, you're usually talking to somebody who believes in democracy, who believes in capitalism. Like, there's certain things that you can be damn sure, if you're a conservative, you're going to believe in those fundamental things, freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you're talking to liberals, that goes away. You're going to have liberals who want state to majorly have all the power and to dole out.
You mean at the federal level, right?
At the federal level, yeah. And then you're going to have liberals who are really like, no way. Like, we know what we've seen that, right? We've seen what, communists will say, well, that's not really that you need more benevolent dictators, right? So on and so forth. But you're going to have liberals who want democracy on top of that. Democracy is a huge change, right? That's like that's a categorical, that's a huge change in a government to have a democracy as opposed to not have a democracy. Whereas conservatives aren't having that argument at all about democracy, right?
Right.
So
no question that.
Yeah.
Although many folks would say that the conservatives take on a more authoritarian aspect with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's very
right.
I mean, he's an authoritarian figure and isn't interested in compromise. He's more of a strong arm type guy.
Yep, you're right about that too.
But again, I think the response to that, or the desire for someone like that, is because of a lack of functionality in our government. And so there's this perception that if we just have someone that is powerful, they can get things done. So that's the compromise. It's like, we know that democracy matters, but change is not occurring at a pace that satisfies me. My generation's getting left behind.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that is probably what's going on.
That's a danger in terms of dangers from both sides of the political spectrum is authoritarianism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a danger for both the left and the right.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is now, and I'm sure he's just joking, right? But no other president could joke about this shit, by the way. I don't feel like there's too many presidents that we've had that could joke about being president in the third term and like not catch some serious shit for it, right? Because it's just like, well, shit, people think you're authoritarian and you're trying to maintain power longer. Like,
if we had some type of amazing leader who is doing great things for the country, I wouldn't have an issue with there being some kind of special referendum to allow them another 4 years, just only this one time. I'd be like, this guy's got it. He's on it. Let's let him keep, leading us.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But this is not the guy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also not, it's not in kind of like, it's not preferential. What you want are a bunch of people you can trust to do the job confidently, and then you can switch power, because you want to fracture power. You want to break it up. You don't want too much to have, too many people to have too much power.
That's why I advocate for pushing the power down, to the local level, as functional as you can get. There are some things that shouldn't be, the power shouldn't be at the local level, but.
Right. Yeah, and it works at the corporate level. This was, we were talking with Chris last time, and I kind of thought, the one that we didn't air, but I think one way for me that I've begun to think of all of this is, because when we talk about money, we end up throwing these words like earn or, blah, blah, blah around. I think that can get complicated. I think it would be less complicated if you imagined that instead of money, we got superpowers. You'd almost ubiquitously agree that, like, I don't care what this word earn is. You can't let people just have a huge amount of superpowers. That is a recipe for disaster. It's just like money can do the same thing as superpowers. It can help you in a court case. Like it can buy you more resources to do more things. Like it gives you literal power. Yeah. Right. But if we think about it in terms of superpowers, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. You don't want people to have too many superpowers. It doesn't really even matter who it is, right? Even if you really, really trust them, they might even be fine with that superpower. You're not going to risk it by just allowing them to have that superpower. You're going to say your power has to stay like here. It has to stay relatively close to what everybody else's is, Yeah, and I think that goes to the heart of that whole thing, right? We have too many things that have too much power, and we want those powers. There's not going to be a way to avoid it completely, but you want there to be way more checks, essentially, which there aren't at this point. There are some.
I'd like to think the checks and balances we do have, though, have saved us a lot of heartache, particularly with the administration that's in place now. Whereas the damage that could be done could be much greater than it is already without the checks and balances that we do have. But I suppose it's yet to be determined. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we could do with some more, but back onto the labeling topic. I do think that I just don't like labels. I don't know. There's just something about them for me. I understand you pointed out, really strong points and instances where you need it or it has to be, and I agree with those. It's just really hard for me to, I guess I think what we need to do, what I want, is for us to think critically about the labels. That's where I'm at. It's not that we don't need the labels. It's that we have to start thinking critically about these labels, essentially, and what they mean. And recognize that it's not always going to work. It's going to be counterintuitive. Stop treating these labels like they're so reliable when they're not. Yeah. And that has to, now that we're talking, I'm trying to figure out how to bring power into this, but the whole even power dynamic. It's just like the problem is that we have two parties with a lot of power, as opposed to 10 parties with more distributed power. That is an issue.
For sure. A distribution of power, at least in terms of how we label ourselves, would be nicer, but maybe they're okay. How do I want to approach this? Okay, so the problem between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, or conservative and liberal, however you want to say it, for the functionality of this conversation, is essentially the same thing. Is a lack of collaboration. That's why our government doesn't function the way it does. So that, to me, if you expand the number of powerful parties to 10 rather than 2, does that mean automatically that it will be easier for them to collaborate, or will we just continue to be in a position where collaboration is still a problem and loyalty to party remains number one? I don't know that solves it seems intuitive to me that it would make it easier to collaborate, because there's less opportunity for you to form such obvious alliances between just one party versus the other. But
Yeah, that's
I don't know, or it might just become 5-on-5 over a period of time.
yeah. I think you pretty much put everything on the table there.
I'm not sure.
I think you did. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the dilemma. Those are all important dilemmas that make that conversation very difficult.
Even if that were the case, though, I think I would rather have more parties than less.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. But you're right, especially when we're trying to figure out like so. This we should talk about this then. So there's a video by CGP Grey that's really good that is on different types of democracies or like ways to organize democracies. And so like if you go to England, I'm pretty sure in some parts of the United Kingdom they have more parties. They have like way more parties with power than we do.
They have way more parties than we do.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the way it's first past the post. So they have one that he talks about one method that I think would be great to think about, because I was thinking like, oh man, that is a problem. But so the thing is that what you do is when you go to the ballot, you choose your top choices. So, this is the first person I want. This is the second person I want. This is the third person.
You're talking about ranked choice voting.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so what happens at that point is, because at first I was just like, well, if you have 5 parties, aren't you going to, if you, and this is probably goes directly, maybe it's a mindset thing too that we have. We have a huge issue with mindset in America, but because even I was thinking this way, but like, let's say people vote for Party 10 and Party 10 gets in power. That means there's 9 other parties that didn't get their candidate, right? That's going to be a lot of unsatisfied people, and you want them to collaborate with other like it would be impossible at that point, right? But the reality is the ranking system dictates that you might not get I think people would be satisfied with, okay, I didn't get my first, but I got my second,
It'll be interesting to see how this experiment plays out, but Maine does ranked choice voting now. Did you?
I didn't know that. Did they just start it?
Yeah, I think it's fairly recent. I don't know if that's the case for the presidential election, because I don't know if that would work with the limited amount of choices that you have. I'm not sure, so don't judge me or don't hold me to that one, but I know that they do within state at least ranked choice voting. So it'd be interesting to see how people in Maine feel about that, and if that will. That's one of the great things about our country is the division of the states allow for ideas to play out at that location. If that idea works and people like it, it might get adopted in other states. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, one state though is probably gonna take a while for something like that to change too. Whereas we might need it right now, given the circumstances, which would require some active decision on a higher level. Would take a bigger decision, which might be difficult to do. But it's also good to test these things out first too. You wouldn't want to just do something like that and not test it in different states and see what happens there first. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think there's a lot of great ideas, and I think like there's another one, they're trying that in the United States too, which is to have politics is like jury duty, where like you are called upon to represent to represent people in your community or whatever it is, people in your state, right?
That is both fascinating and terrifying to me.
And the thing is, they've done it and it works. Like they've done it in other countries, and I think they're trying it in some American cities, and what they found is that it actually works.
Where have they tried this? Because I'm totally into checking this out.
You're gonna have to look it up. I've forgotten at this point. I know that I heard it on some academic podcast.
Well, okay, Montana has like their state representatives. They don't really get paid. They're only there for.
Well, you get paid. That's the other thing too. Is like the common people, you get what you would be getting if you were working a regular job, and you get all the benefits and stuff too. So you still get that.
Yeah, but in Montana, like they don't in our state, it's like a career, like to be a politician essentially at the state level. They get paid very well here, but in Montana, you just go and like the state Congress assembles for a very short period of time. And they just hammer everything out like, we're going to solve the problems now. and then like that's it, and then they go home, they go back to their regular job. So they're not career politicians.
Right.
So there's some incentive there to like be loyal to your community, because they'll get rid of you there if you're not doing their bidding instead of some politician. But it'd be interesting to see. I want to look into that now more about what those communities governing that way. That's very interesting.
Yeah, well, what they found, and it makes sense this way, which again,
this is like for cities or townships, or
I don't think it works at the country level yet. I don't think anybody. I might be wrong about that. I think maybe this person was. If I can find the podcast, I'll show it to you, or I'll send it to you. But you might have to look it up. But basically, the idea is that when it comes down to it, the average person relies on other people's intelligence. So what happens is those people get in power, because you would think like there's a lot you don't know, right? What happens is those people get in power and they're like, who do I ask about these things? Because I don't know. Whereas if you have somebody like Trump, right, or you have these career politicians, they've had years of smoke being blown up their ass about how awesome they are, what they know.
That's an academic term.
Yeah, and then they don't. And then so they don't ask questions. They're more likely to just make the decisions themselves because they think they have to take this authoritative position. I think we're seeing that right now in its most extreme form. I don't think there's anybody that's been as bad on this. That's something I feel like I can reliably say about Trump, is that like when it came to all the other presidents, I do feel like they tried to listen to people in expert communities more, even Bush. Whereas I feel like I'm more likely to hear a report about Trump not listening to staff members or to silencing scientists or taking a position that's contrary to them. I don't think it's ever been this bad before.
Well, there's certainly presidents in the past that have removed, policy leaders, department heads for not getting along with their program, and buying into their own personal agenda. But I think the level that we see it with Trump is just another step above. Just a higher level of narcissism we probably haven't seen in a while. Just a complete throwaway of the expert, almost in their entirety, unless it's totally in line with what he wants to do. I mean, he puts people in power that are going to do what he wants, regardless of the evidence.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of pushback from his administration for him to change his mind.
You're right. And that's a huge problem there. That is a huge problem. I think maybe that just articulated what I think one of my biggest problems with it, why I'm so scared of what's going on now. To me, it only seems like a matter of time before bad things start to happen, given that formula. I could be wrong.
That we were going to bomb Iran the other day, right?
Yeah, but he called it off.
Yeah, thank God.
And he also was going to basically get really extreme on immigration too. He was gonna, he was gonna potentially put a lot of people who couldn't afford it all to go back to be pushed back, and he went back on that too. The Republicans say that's negotiating, apparently, which maybe it is. I don't know. But for me, the biggest things are like the fact that like you don't want any one person to, again, it's just that idea of power. Like you don't want them to have so much power. And you should be afraid of people who don't want checks. You should be afraid of them. You should be afraid of anybody that relies on their own intelligence so much. That is clearly Trump. But then again, you know what? This is a place where I'm going to be really honest with people here. For me, I'm not going to speak on your behalf, but for my own behalf.
Appreciate that.
When I talk to Trump supporters, a lot of them seem overconfident in their own intelligence. That seems to be a constant trait, is that they are aware of how they're more likely to think they know more than a large group of people, it's one of those things where I'm like, that's a grandiose delusion there. That's a grandiose delusion to think that you know more than a bunch of people who spent their careers studying something, have the information that you don't, have access to databases that you don't, that you're going to, I got into a debate with somebody the other day where they were did I tell you this? I think I told you this yesterday.
We'll find out in a second.
Well, he was basically like, all the information's available. It's all on Google and YouTube. We can do the research ourselves. And I'm like, you're going to do the research on every possible thing there is to do research on and come to correct conclusions yourself, huh? Yeah. Like scientists don't even think they can do that. And that's what makes them.
And furthermore, that's not really true. I the best information, the most accurate information you can get is often from databases that, unless you're a student or a researcher, it's very hard to get a hold of.
Yep. And even at that point, you can recognize that schools themselves pay for membership, and they don't even have the money necessarily to pay for like all of the databases. So what you get is just a collection of some databases.
Yep. There's tons of knowledge out there. The best knowledge, as Trump might say, the best knowledge is we don't have access to that, even though a lot of it's taxpayer funded.
Yeah, and there are a lot of movements, by the way, now that we're talking about this, in the academic community to make information more accessible. So keep in mind, this is also, you can at this point say, well, they're just trying to keep information from us. And it's like, no, they're trying really hard to release information to people, but that's how they get paid.
Yeah. You know who Aaron Schwartz is, right? He was the early pioneer of, I mean, he what he did was illegal in a sense, but he tried basically giving out databases for free and like releasing, like doing these huge like public drops of all these different pieces of research.
Well, that's what Lawrence Lessig does now. He has he's a Harvard professor, and he has what is it called? Like the Free Source Project or something like that. But it's basically that. It's to try to make, once a certain paper has gone through a certain lifespan, they try to immediately release that information. Or some actually, or they allow you to volunteer to just release it for free, which is also great. So you can just be like, I did this study, but you know what? It's important. Everybody deserves to know it, and they'll release it for free. That shit happens, by the way, in academia all the time, which is one of those reasons where I'm just like, I'm going to go with them. Like, they seem to be pretty moral people. Yeah, they seem to be less noble. Concerned with money, right? They're less, it's not like they're making millions. Yeah. They're not making millions, right? They pay a financial cost for that.
It's a very noble act to like share something you've come to an understanding of, that information, to share it with the public.
Especially when it could give you money. It could actually.
Yeah. That's what makes it noble, is you're sacrificing that for the betterment of others.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping that closed off.
Yeah, like you'll hear a scientist talk about, like, there are scientists who, instead of like, I forget who it was, but basically, we could be paying a lot for certain health options, but this person released this for free, and now nobody's paying for it. And it's just like, he could have made a lot of money to do that, to hike up the prices, to allow no one to patent it. He allowed everybody to patent it, That's why people don't like the pharmaceutical companies, and they're fucking right not to, Not that people don't need medicine or any of that crap. But what I am saying is the fact that pharmaceutical companies have the incentive to act like a corporation and make money and to maximize profits, people don't like them. But it's funny because some of those people love corporations on every level, and it's just like, that is a corporation. That is a created corporation. Not that corporations are necessarily always bad, but we can look at instances and be like, wait, there are certain things you just can't turn into a market. You can't do it, or you get that. So it's just like, if you want people who are worried about making money when they make medicine, so they patent their idea so nobody else can use it or make it cheaper for people, especially when they need it, right? Like, of course you're going to have people who are disgruntled, who aren't happy about it. Now if that person was making enough, that would take some type of government assistance, and then you would get, you would take away from the market aspect of that career, or whatever it is you want to call it.
I think, to try to bring it back to conservative and liberal, not that I don't have an issue with where we went. I think it's all good, but I think I've done the best I can to kind of like give a visual of how I see conservatism to the audience that's out there somewhere eventually at some point. But I've been struggling to come up with a similar analogy with liberalism or liberal ideas. I mean, the thing that pops up into my picture or to my mind is like a group of people standing around in a circle holding hands or something, but that doesn't translate so specifically as my analogies to liberalism. Is there anything for you that helps you, that you think you could give the audience, like an image of liberalism, like from your perspective?
Liberalism versus
Like,
conservatism.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Like, I'm saying, is there a way of you describing liberalism
I think I
that
can
makes
describe
it
both.
clear? Okay.
Yeah, I think I can describe both. So for in terms of the image, one for the conservative, it's probably going to come from some movie. I feel like it's going to come from some movie where I saw somebody who was highly regimented, and um, or like something like Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk is highly regimented. You know, he's very systematic, but he's also pretty liberal if you listen to him talk.
He's liberal in his visionary sense.
He's also no, I mean he's liberal in terms of the fact that he actually thinks the state should be doing more in certain circumstances. But so maybe, he's not full. I'm pretty sure he votes liberally. I'm pretty sure, and the reason is like he recognized, like he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and they were talking about global warming, and Joe Rogan's like, well, isn't there like a corporate solution to all this? And Elon Musk is like, what? How are you going to get corporations to collaborate on something that isn't necessarily going to make them money tomorrow? Like that's not what corporations do. They're short-sighted. They look to maximize profits. You're asking something that isn't built to do something it's not built to do. And so that to me solidified the response that like he understands or whatever, that like there are certain things that even what he does the most isn't necessarily better for everything, right? He lives conservatively. He lives as this corporatist that's trying to maximize profits and make money, even though he recognizes that's not the solution for everything, essentially, right? He takes a more, like I think you were saying earlier, like a fuller picture or a bigger approach to certain political actions, essentially. So that I think Elon Musk is going to be like an image for me of conservatism, how I want to live my life, and how I, not that he's even the best. I'm sure there's even people who are better. You can get it to him. You can get to people that like, you don't even necessarily have to like, but they have good components. Like, well, I like Jocko Willings. I don't listen to him that much, but who's the other guy?
Jocko Willink is a huge example of like moderate conservatism in terms of being self-disciplined, hard work, carving your own path. He's a great modern example, I think, of conservatism.
Yeah, who's the other dude though? He's black. He won like he was a SEAL, Navy SEAL.
David Goggins.
Yeah, David Goggins. Yeah, just in terms, again, you might not like certain aspects of him, but just in terms of his mentality and what he says, like you got to get up every day. You're the one that has to do this, so on and so forth. It's like, I listen to him or somebody all the time, and I'm like, that's right. That's right for me. You know what I mean?
That's right for everybody. Like you were saying earlier, like if you're of healthy mind and body, that self-discipline is critical to like you being able to, regardless of your surrounding restrictions, that behavior is always going
useful
to be better
some
for
capacity.
You. Now, your restrictions or your wider context might mean that the harder you work, the better you do, versus like the person who's working just as hard as you with more restrictions might not, like they might be getting inches when you're getting yards. Of progress.
And people show that creates unhappiness too. That very thing.
Yeah. But it's still better for you and the people that are in your life.
Yep. Yeah.
It's always going to be better.
Yeah. And you can, so we can look at somebody like, it probably depends on what you mean too. That's where it's all going to break down. Like we can talk about like Jay-Z is the first rapper billionaire, right?
Yeah.
And he got his beginnings from selling drugs and working in the streets, and you can look at that two ways. You can say that's not very conservative to do, right? Or you could say it was really conservative that he, saved money. He had all these rules, he just ended up working hard doing something that was illegal.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's not something like for me, I'm not going to celebrate that because it involves like, we all know who Jay-Z is now, and he's famous, and he's probably a decent human being at this point. But I can imagine that there's some people names that we'll never know of human beings that like
he really hurt or
and their lives are worse off now because they interacted with him.
Right, exactly, and that's what we were right. So now that I'm listening to you, you're the correct one. because I was going to say that you can say that, like, even though he was liberal, he got himself out of the hole, and then now he's this good, whatever.
Yeah.
But then also, how many lives has he affected, maybe even from where he came from, now that he has the money to actually help the community he came out of?
Sure.
So it's difficult, maybe.
And maybe that's a redemptive act, and you do want to celebrate acts of redemption, right? Like if someone changes who they are from what they used to be, if they're better now.
Yeah.
But you don't want to celebrate a kind of conservatism that puts, like when I was talking about Little House on the Prairie conservatism, which is a form of conservatism that I like or appeals to me, the idea of it.
It's simple.
It's simple, but it also implies an obligation to the people that you're around, and the kind of behavior that we're talking about with someone who carves their own path at anyone else's expense is not something that I want in greater society.
Yeah, I don't want it either. Yeah, but just in terms of thinking about living conservatively versus liberal, I think that basically you'd want someone like Jay-Z to become Jay-Z without having to do any of those things.
Right.
Which would take outside influence.
Right.
It would take him to have the opportunity to, and then he could have, right? So that is, part of the problem. But yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying in terms of the Little House on the Prairie analogy, and again, just I guess thinking that we didn't talk about what liberal means. I don't think.
No, we focused a lot on conservatism.
Yeah,
which is fine. But again, I don't have such a clear analogy for liberalism, because I think it's such a broader. It's harder to. I think it's harder to condense, but I mean, it just without providing a visual, I tend to focus on like the strength of liberalism being equality for all.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of making things better for everyone. I think that is a noble idea, but in terms of functionality, like we talked about earlier in the episode, I'm not sure that plays out appropriately. It's like sharing, equality. Those are the things that I think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I got it. I think for me, what it is when I think of conservatism, I think of individualism. I think of an individual acting in their own actions for their own methods. When I think of a liberal, I think of a parent. I think of a parent interacting with their child. That's what I start to think more like that, essentially. I'm not saying that there aren't ever reasons where a parent shouldn't be stern with their child, right? But what I do imagine when I think liberal is somebody that acknowledges all the important aspects of nurturing, as opposed to basically, man, it's hard. It is still really difficult. Like not treating, like they have that saying, right? The saying, like you should treat others how you want to be treated.
The golden rule. Yeah.
Right. But then there's another saying by some scientist. I forget what it is, and this is something to think about too, which is kind of getting me there. It's treat others 30% better than you want to be treated to accommodate for bias and error. So the idea is that you're never going to treat somebody the same way you treat yourself. So treat them better, essentially.
Yeah.
And then I'm closer to it, where I'm just like, the best that I can do is I'm going to have more patience with somebody else than I have with myself. I'm really going to try to do that. I'm going to try to have patience with another person more than I do myself and my own decisions. Not that I shouldn't have patience with myself.
So that's kind of sparked my mind. I don't want to turn this into a self-improvement podcast all of a sudden, but this idea of parent and like child and like the caring aspect, and in terms of self-improvement, something I'd just like share a quick anecdote. Something that has helped me in my own self-improvement, rather than thinking about myself. I had this realization. I was at my grandma's farm. This happened to me a couple years ago, but I saw a picture of myself as a kid. It's easier for me to help myself when I think of like the kid and like, well, what would you do to make this kid's life better?
Did you know about that? Did you know that that's a strategy in psychology?
No, but it's worked for me, and I've used it when I was working out west. There, I would use that with the students I was working with.
Wow.
But that's something that worked for me, and I didn't know that was a thing, but I mean,
That's a real concept in psychology. The idea of treating some aspects of yourself like the way you wish you would have been treated when you were a child.
yeah,
And that does help people a lot. That's
helped
helped
me
me a
immensely.
lot. Yeah.
Because I feel like I owe something to that kid rather than, myself here and now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that should have limits too, though. I think so. So now, before I was saying you should treat yourself conservatively, but now there are aspects where you should treat yourself liberally, and so maybe we've broken down all barriers, and now it's just like, well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't with everything.
Well, yeah, that
pretty
does
much
make
the way
sense.
it
That
is.
flexibility is
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, those rigid, going back to labeling, those rigid definitions can get you into trouble
Yeah.
if they don't fit in a particular circumstance.
Yeah. So, and then, we can go into that too. Like, for instance, you can make a mistake and you can label yourself by that mistake. Oh, I'm this thing now, right? I lied, so now I'm a liar. And you can always see yourself as a liar. That's probably not going to be helpful. What's helpful is to acknowledge what you did, right? Like the conservative aspect, but then ask how to grow from there, which is a liberal aspect. So it's really just that constant cycle. Yeah. So, man, it's like the more I think about these things, the more I separate myself from all the muckiness or the arguments that go on in day to day. Because it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we're all missing each other's points. We're all making good points, but we don't recognize that the other side's making good points too. Because it always ends up going back to that. Where it's just like, well, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, right?
Yeah.
And to just kind of give each other more respect, or whatever it is. Not that you always give people again, because we were thinking about the conservative thing. Like, well, do you want to treat race? You want to nurture racists? And it's just like, well, there's sometimes I guess where you do have to be more hard-nosed or whatever, conservative, if you will, in circumstances. Like, how could you expect not to? You know what I mean? Essentially, but I guess the reality, again, to me, the reality is to break down the labels. It's to stop worrying about what it's called and just do the damn thing. It's because you're in this head of I have to be conservative, I have to be liberal. Why don't you just do what you think is really right and go from there? Go from there, troubleshoot from there. Maybe the conservative solution's right, maybe the liberal solution's right. Maybe you apply the liberal solution, it doesn't work out, so from now on you try a conservative solution, and vice versa. And to just really stop worrying about what it's called when you do it. Oh, that was a conservative thing to do. Or
I'd like to think it's in moments like this right now that we're demonstrating the point of our podcast of like the currency of discourse, like in having a conversation, fleshing out things in a non-adversarial way allows for people to come to realizations that they might not had before. And so I hope in moments like this, I feel like this has been a good conversation.
We were talking about yesterday, maximizing the amount of knowledge that you can create in a scenario by having the right type of skills, or because we were talking about this. We talked about this last night, but essentially, like, a lot of people have a lot of good ideas about how conversation should go, and to listen to those ideas and listen to each other and really try to just do the thing.
Yeah, and if for our audience, like we like to give them a meta explanation of how we do things. Is like, we don't have, like, there's not a script sitting in front of you and me. Like, we have a rough idea of what we want to talk about, and we are allow ourselves to kind of like explore in that framework. And if we need to go out of it, we allow that flexibility. And so I think that's great, because sometimes we end up, we feel like we don't talk about a whole lot, but other times we come to like, we hit a connection and we're like, okay, this makes sense for us. Let's keep going down that road. So I hope that's been a good demonstration of what we try to do,
and do that more and better and with more people. Right.
Yes, exactly.
I said we made that's why I asked you to look at that Patreon thing, because I wanted to know what you thought. Because that to me was just the clearest I've ever put it. So I might end up putting that in other locations as well.
No, I think it was good. It holds us to a high standard, and I hope that we can fulfill it.
Yeah.
But that was like pretty professionally written, so I thought that was
that's
good.
what you were talking about too, is the high standard. I try not to set too high of a standard, rather than just what we want, and if we miss the mark, then we do, but that is our goal.
Yeah. Well, I think we do a pretty good job on the podcast of trying to like be humble about what we're doing and acknowledge that we can be, at least when we're talking. I mean, sometimes when we put like written information out there, I think we write it a little bit more clearly as to what we're trying to do. But
Yeah.
I think we're pretty good at staying humble.
I think another thing that we could do, though, now that we're talking about it, is, I thought like we talk about these principles. Is should we have it in list form, like in front of us sometimes, so we can always try to remember certain things, like, oh, here's what we're trying to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that. So we always have that standard in front of us because like I've noticed, like we have skills, but last time when Chris was here, I wasn't as good as implementing those skills. And I feel like maybe if I had the list of what I actually wanted to achieve in a conversation beforehand, those conversations would go better, So also to maybe think about doing that or something like that as well, and having more meta conversations about how conversation should go, I think is the idea, right?
Yeah.
How do you think conversation should go? What can we establish beforehand to make this go smoothly, right? That's what we want.
Yeah.
We want the conversation.
I learned a lot through meta explanations in school. Like when people explain to me why we're doing what we're doing, like the why is very important to me. And so I would hope that over the course of the last couple episodes we've done, we're really showing how to have a good conversation and why it's important, but the higher existing structures and how we're able to accomplish those that you're talking about. I think it would be great to do some episodes on those, and that I think for you that'd be like your time to shine. You can really show, what you've learned with your background and everything. So that'd be cool to do, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking we could go back to Roger and humanity and charity, because I recognize that we talked about the ideas, but we didn't talk about where they come from or anything like that too.
Yeah, so like a Rogerian argumentation episode, part 2.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Part
where we go
D.
into, because obviously the first one came from Carl Rogers, but the other one came from I'm pretty sure the principle of humanity comes from Hume, maybe Hume or Kant.
Can't remember.
Okay, but it's something like that. So maybe that would be useful for people too. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would be useless, but we can talk about that later.
It would be useful for us at the very least.
Yeah.
And if someone else is interested, then cool.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, before I think we're almost done here. Do we want to?
So if you want to let the audience know, like all the other platforms we're on now.
Yeah. So we've got pretty much everything, up and ready to go. Pretty close. We're on YouTube, obviously, but we're gonna be on. We're on SoundCloud, we're on iTunes, we're on Google Play,
Spotify.
Yeah, we're on Spotify. So we got all the major ones. And we also have a Patreon page too, which we want to talk about. What the goals for that are. I'm probably gonna talk about it first the next episode, so try to remind me to talk about it first in the next episode. But to get all this out of the way, but we just like doing this. We have other kind of like ambitions and goals in terms of like our economic status and things like that. So we're really just looking for something that allows us to keep doing this. We're doing this in our spare time right now, which, by the way, is why you don't necessarily hear a lot of editing, or we want to do those things. We know how to do those things.
Very raw.
But that takes certain types of programs, right? There's programs that streamline that process. So all that can kind of be in the future. We just need feedback from you, obviously, to let us know if you want us to keep doing this thing. And then again, the big thing is, if we could, eventually get to a point where we're not paying to do this. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
We want to get to the point where we're not paying to do this. And then that would be, to me, that would be mission fulfilled for me, in terms of just being able to do this and not having had to pay for it.
Yeah. And we don't have a huge audience yet, which we're fine with, because to us this is like a labor of love. Like we enjoy doing this, so we put it on air. Because we have these conversations anyways.
Yeah.
So for us, it's just like an exercise for us in improving ourselves. But my point in saying that we don't have this large audience yet is if you are listening, it allows you easier access to us. So if you want to inject yourself in the conversation, you could do that pretty easily.
That's the other thing, is we're small form too. We want regular conversations with regular people sometimes.
Yeah. You don't have to be. We're not the brightest people in the world, and we're not big time academics or anything. So we're looking for having conversations with the ordinary person, and really trying to generate, thought with the general population, and getting people motivated to think critically about what they believe and how they want to shape shape their own communities, their own societies, and
Yeah, so
please interact with us.
And Patreon even has a page. We're going to try to update it here soon and get it the way we want. But Patreon has option. I saw on there it's a natural option that if you are a Patreon subscriber, or if you are a I'm not sure exactly even what it's called.
I couldn't tell you, man.
If you are a donator, there are options for you to come on the show. And because of this, especially given the topic of this particular show, it's not like there could be a concern that we're basically paying people to hear them talk to themselves. But this is a show about conversations and how to have them. So if you are, the type of person that has something to say about how you think conversations go, or anything that we want that. We want it to be an open conversation about how to have conversations, or certain topics. So this show lends itself to that type of thing. Also, I've thought of, I don't know if we would do this collaboratively, or I might do it, but essentially like a call-in, where call-ins are also options, but those are going to have to be a little bit further down the road, considering where we're at with this thing. And then the last thing is the website that I wanted to mention, because we did make a website. It hopefully here soon it will have just so you can get to anything at any point, but it would just be oh shit, what is it? It's Wix.com. See, that's the thing, is we have to buy our own website. And until we buy our own website, it is currently like Wix.com/currency of discourse without the E-1.
There's no E in it?
There's no E in discourse.
We don't even know our own website.
Yeah, -1. So or you can just put in currency of discourse in Google, and it should come up. But yeah.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, it probably doesn't. Okay, I mean, so again, that's
Wix.currency of discourse without the E .com /1.
Yep. Not /1, -1.
-1 after the .com?
No. Wix.com/currency of discourse without an E -1.
.com.
No. Wait, currencyofdiscourse.com. Oh, wait, did I say that? No, currencyofdiscourse.com/ Wix.com. Okay, so we'll just
You'll get to hear all this.
Yeah, so we'll link all the shit or whatever. But my point is, that's exactly my point. Is if I wish I could just say,
I thought you were going to say, just go to the website and look it up. And I was like, we can't even tell them what the website is.
Currencyofdiscourse.com is what we want. It's what we don't have right now. And that would just be a kind of a great starting point too. So
it's probably someone else's website already.
No way. It's not. Well, first of all, I've already checked, but I should probably refrain from saying that on here, just in case any fucking trolls decide.
It's gone. It's gone.
Fucker
already.
Yeah. No, it's not. All right, so that's it from me. Anything for you, Jay?
No, that's it. We can close it down. Appreciate you guys listening. This is the Currency of Discourse podcast, and have a good night.
Have a nice night.